maybe some drizzle at times, and it's going to feel quite chilly beneath that cloud in eastern Scotland. Temperatures 9 or 10 Celsius, but further western Scotland and Northern Ireland with those sunny spells, temperatures 14 to 16 Celsius.
Thanks, Simon. Time now for a look at the papers. The Rwanda bill features on many of the front pages. Flight of fantasy is the question posed by the headline in The Independent, which carries out a warning from MPs that flights to Rwanda will remain grounded despite the bill because of legal challenges. The Telegraph reminds readers that Rishi Sunak has pledged a regular drumbeat of multiple flights every month throughout the summer and beyond, once the scheme is operational. The Guardian's lead is an interview with Sir Mark Rowley, the Met Police Chief Commissioner, in which he praises what he calls the professional conduct of the officer at the centre of an anti-Semitism row with the activist Gideon Falter at a pro-Palestinian march last weekend. Sir Mark also tells the paper that police at other protests have been set up by activists using fakery to undermine the force. The Times reports evidence presented to its own Crime and Justice Commission that organised crime gangs are infiltrating jails by getting associates recruited as prison officers. Spoken to the former Chief Inspector of Prisons, Nick Hardwick, who says governors have told him that criminals are placing people in jail to distribute drugs and oversee other illegal activities. Base of a killer is the headline in the Mirror. It carries a photo of Milorad Ulemek, a Serbian assassin who's serving 40 years in jail and who bears what the paper says is a striking resemblance to a man wanted for questioning in relation to the murder of the TV presenter Jill Dando in 1999. It reports that a facial comparison expert found that the image of Man X, taken from a CCTV clip from near Miss Dando's home, had a similar mouth, chin and hairline to Ulemek, which has led to calls for police to investigate a possible link. Many of the front pages picture the BBC presenter Hugh Edwards, whose resignation from the corporation was announced yesterday, after allegations of inappropriate behaviour were made against him last summer. The Sun, which published the initial story, has spoken again to the family of the young person involved. They've told the paper they're worried that because Mr Edwards has resigned, they won't get the answers they so desperately need. The Star claims to have found Britain's hardest seagull. The paper says it's nicknamed the Boss and has been on the rampage in Liverpool, stealing people's chippy teas. A father who alleges that gas burning at an oil field caused his son's leukemia is taking legal action against BP. With details of that and the rest of the business news, is Saranjana Tawari.
An Iraqi father has started legal action in Britain against the energy giant BP over the death of his son. Hussein Jaloud alleges that gas burning at an oil field run by the firm in southern Iraq caused his son's leukemia. The case is believed to be the first by an individual against an oil company over the practice known as flaring. Ali Jaloud, who lived within the boundaries of the Rumaila oil field, died last year from leukemia. He was 21. His father is seeking compensation to cover medical costs as well as the loss of his son. BP told the BBC it supported efforts by the lead contractor at the oil field to reduce flaring. The supply of properties in some seaside locations has jumped, although home buyers will find the prices have increased too, according to Zoopla. The property website says the choice of properties across Britain has increased by around 20% compared to a year ago, but supply has increased strongly in locations like Cornwall, Bournemouth and Poole. In the city, the 100 share index, the index of the UK's top performing blue chip companies, ended the day up 128 points at 8,024, a new record high. The increase was driven in part by a rally in the share price of major retailers such as Sainsbury's, Tesco and Marks and Spencer's, as well as a weaker pound and hopes that economic conditions are improving. On Wall Street, the Dow Jones closed up 254 points at 38,240. On the currency markets, the pound is trading at $1.23.5. Against the euro, sterling is at €1.15.9. That makes a euro worth 86.3.
Now sport, and with news of a thrilling victory for Leeds United in the Championship and the latest from the World Snooker Championships. Here's Shojo Saka.
Leeds United are back up to second in the Championship after a thrilling 4-3 win away at Middlesbrough. They're 1 point above third-placed Ipswich and 1 point below the leaders Leicester, having played a game more than both of their promotion rivals. Nottingham Forest have demanded that the audio of the conversation between officials from Sunday's defeat at Everton be released publicly. Meanwhile, the FA has asked Forest, their manager Nuno, defender Nico Williams and the analyst Mark Clattenburg for their observations as a result of Forest's post-match comments. The club were furious after 3 penalty claims were rejected in their 2-0 defeat at Goodison Park. It's kept them just 1 point above the Premier League's relegation zone. At the World Snooker Championship, Stuart Bingham, the 2015 champion, is through to round 2 after knocking out Gary Wilson by 10 frames to 5. Earlier in the day, the 4-time winner Mark Selby was knocked out by Joe O'Connor. Sean Murphy is also through to round 2. In golf, the Masters champion Scotty Scheffler continued his dominance by winning the storm-delayed RBC Heritage in South Carolina for his 4th win in 5 starts. The world number 1 carded a 3-under par 68 in the final round to finish on 19 under and win by 4 shots. And in rugby union, Rosie Galligan and Lark Atkin-Davis will miss England's Grand Slam decider against France on Saturday through injury. Lark Galligan pulled out of Saturday's win over Ireland in the warm-up with a thumb injury, while hooker Atkin-Davis came off with an ankle injury. Both will see specialists this week to assess their injuries.
Finally, a glance back at some of the stories that were making the news on this date in earlier years. In 2020, scientists in Oxford started the first human trials of a coronavirus vaccine in Europe. The microbiologist Lisa Granato was the first to receive the jab.
I'm a scientist, so of course I want to try and support the scientific process whenever I can. And since I don't study viruses, I felt a bit useless these days, so I felt like this is a very easy way for me to support the cause.
In 2005, the first video was uploaded to YouTube. A former personal assistant to the Duchess of York, Jane Andrews, went on trial on this day in 2001, accused of murdering her boyfriend. She was eventually convicted and jailed for killing Thomas Cressman. On this day in 1985, Coca-Cola changed its recipe. A public backlash caused the company to abandon the so-called New Coke and return to the original version after just 79 days. The first decimal coins entered circulation in Britain in 1968 in preparation for replacing the system of pounds, shillings and pence by 1971. The 5 new pence and 10 new pence coins operated alongside the shilling and the florin and had the same value, size and weight. In 1924, the first British stamp to feature an image which wasn't a portrait of the monarch was issued. The stamp advertised the British Empire exhibition at Wembley. And in 1564, William Shakespeare is widely believed to have been born on this date and to have died exactly 52 years later, on the 23rd of April in 1616. And that's the end of News Briefing. Now on Radio 4, it's time for Prayer for the Day with Davinder Singh, the Principal Advisor of the Sikh Federation UK.
Good morning on St George's Day. As we approach the end of April, Sikhs in many towns and cities in the UK would have held Nagar Kirtans, or planning them for next Sunday. Nagar Kirtans are large processions led by the Panch Pyare, the 5 beloved ones, followed by the Guru Granth Sahib Ji, the Sikh holy scriptures. Out of respect, Sevadars, volunteers, clean the roads before the Panch Pyare and the Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Kirtan, or singing of shabds, divine hymns, take place for the entire route. The Sangat, or congregation, walk behind the Guru Granth Sahib Ji and join in the singing of Kirtan. When participating in the Nagar Kirtan, one can find solace and peace, even when thousands are walking with you. Another common feature of Nagar Kirtans is younger Sikhs demonstrating Gatka, a form of self-defense originating from the 15th century that has seen a massive revival in the West. Plenty of free vegetarian food and drinks. The concept and reason for a Nagar Kirtan is, however, often lost on many. It is designed to take the message of God to the doorstep of the local community. Nagar Kirtans are happy occasions that we can all enjoy. But I pray for those who are homeless, they find shelter, and no one go hungry.
That was Prayer for the Day with Dabinderjit Singh. Now on Radio 4 Farming Today with Anna Hill.
Good morning. Today, the huge task underway in Ukraine to help farmers clear their valuable land of mines.
Particularly at this time of year, which is obviously critical in the farming season, people will take risks and they will go in their fields and they will try to plant their crops because it's so important to them, even if they fear that mines are in there.
We'll have more on that a little later. First today, an environmental charity in Germany which invests in projects around the world is donating more than €1 million to re-wet peatlands in England. Paul Ledbetter at the North Pennines National Landscape Group says the funding from NABU, the Nature and Biodiversity Conservation Union, will support work on more than 900 acres of degraded peatland on 5 key sites in the North Pennines, Cumbria and County Durham. Dried out peatland gives off carbon dioxide, but when it's restored to wetland peat, it becomes a significant carbon sink. I asked Frank Vesthoff, head of the Climate Fund at NABU, why the charity decided to help a UK project.
In order to speed up our efforts for the protection of climate, NABU decided to raise more money and raised about 30 million, but we have a lack of sites we could restore in Germany because of high pressure on land use, and nearly 100% of the drained peatlands, of the degraded peatlands, are in farmland use. So we had the problem to spend our money, and my consequence was to go to other European countries with safe law systems so we can protect the projects from future damage.
What is the difference then? Why would you choose to give money to a site in the UK rather than the rainforest in the Amazon or whatever? Are you saying that there is more protection after you've done the work?
No, we are hearing many stories about greenwashing with credits, carbon credits raised in the global south without any substance, and my consequence has been very early, only to raise projects just in our backyard in Europe, where we have safe law systems, where we can purchase land and can protect it by contracts and repair it, and can be safe for decades, that nobody will go in there and do any harm to the projects.
It might be unusual for us, though, for members of the public here in the UK to think, hang on a minute, is another country looking at us as if we are a rainforest in the Amazon and saying, you need to be protected?
In the UK, degraded peatlands have a long history, and so many of the best experts are living there and working there, and so we got to the North Pennines and to Paul Ledbetter very early, because he understood what is our need. We have money and we want to bring it into use immediately and not waiting for 10 years of bureaucracy like we usually have it in Germany.
Oh, right, so it would be quicker in the UK, would it, to get this done?
Yeah, absolutely. There is, in the North Pennines, there is no land use pressure. It's only hunting and...
There is farming. There is some farming. What do the farmers think?
Not in that size. There are a couple of sheep running around there, but this is concepts of the 70s, and people told me there that it's not really fruitful and not really a business case for farmers there, but that farmers can work for the peatland restoration.
You mentioned at the beginning that you've raised a lot of money, £30 million, from private companies. So does this project then include carbon credits?
No. My story was always that credits is only stuff for projects you can't visit, far away. But the company does not need credits. They need trust, and trust can be made only in your neighborhood.
Frank Westroff from the charity NABU in Germany. Now, all week we're talking trees, the finances, the biodiversity benefits, and today how creating woodland can fit into working farmland. Farmers can be paid to integrate tree planting into their farm management plans through government schemes like countryside stewardship. The Woodland Trust in Cumbria encourages and advises farmers like David Corrie Close, who grazes a small herd of Shetland cattle on the northern fringes of Ullswater. Helen Millican's been to visit him, and first she met organic dairy farmer Mark Lee, who's planting more and more trees on his pastures near Wigton.
We've planted them this spacing so that when they're in full canopy, they're not going to be touching, and the grass will grow around them.
Pete Leeson is Partnerships Officer for the Woodland Trust in Cumbria, and he's mentoring Mark through the tree planting process.
We call this companion planting. So you have what you might call a forest tree, plus maybe a crabapple or hawthorn or something else. Within a year, they will be at the top of this guard here, so the lower guard. Within 3 years, they should be topping the metal guard.
Which is what, 5.5 feet?
Yep, 5.5 feet-ish. We'll start to see a canopy really starting at year 10. But it supports Mark's system of agriculture. These trees are going to manage the grass better, they're going to manage water better, but they're also browsable. Mark and Jenny have chosen species here which are going to benefit the browsing of the animals, which adds to their health and well-being.
We want to create an environment where the cows are more relaxed, and therefore they produce more milk. We put the trees in the actual field purely because we want to improve our production rather than negate it. When people say it's either trees or it's food, we're trying to say no, it's both and more of both. These girls have just calved and they're just enjoying our first bit of sunshine really in about 4 months.
They are positively basking, aren't they?
They are. They're enjoying it. They rotate these fields. They'll come back on this field in probably about 40 days.
How many of your parcels of land here for your mob grazing would be wood pasture ultimately?
We want to be able to incorporate trees into the majority of our farming. At the end of this year, a quarter of our grazing block would be wooded pasture. I think ultimately what we'd like to do is move away from producing a lot of silage, and having trees in the field will hopefully allow us to have the cows out all year round with the shelter that the trees provide. And to do that we'll need at least 2/3 of our grazing block to be wooded pasture.
If we can get trees onto farms in this way, we can have amazing impacts in terms of tree planting, for biodiversity, for water, without losing productivity from our farmland. We can bring trees back onto farms and not lose the way in terms of agriculture.
Having circumnavigated the towering bulk of Skiddaw, headed towards Ullswater, we've arrived at David Corrie Close's Green Close farm, where you've spent the morning tree planting.
Pete's just going around there doing up the cable ties that I haven't done tight enough. We did a bit of planting this morning. Downy birch, alder buckthorn, wild cherry, rowan.
I think I'm right in saying, David, you've got 26,000 trees to plant.
Yeah, you told me that last week, Pete. Thanks for the reminder. We're standing here on this very wet, quite steep slope that slopes down to the river. A place on the farm that I just don't want the cattle in the wet parts of the year. It's a part of the farm which lends itself to being more densely planted.
And you can see that here, we've got clumps of planting.
And as we go uphill, those trees are going to become fewer and further between into that classic wood pasture that Mark was talking about earlier, of somewhere between 30, 40, 50 trees per hectare.
I know it looks like a load of tubes at the moment, but I can already see it as an established woodland. In this very, very marginal landscape for food production, payments are key. This farm in the Countryside Stewardship higher tier is going to get really generous payments for transforming this landscape into one that has way more trees. But we can still farm, we can still have cattle grazing here, and we can still produce great food.
David Corrie Close there in Cumbria. Now, before Russia's invasion in 2022, Ukraine was sending about 6.5 million tonnes of grain abroad every month. But in 2023, that fell to just over 2 million tonnes. Around 38 million acres of Ukrainian farmland has now been rendered too dangerous to farm by Russian mines. According to the charity the Mines Advisory Group, there have been more than 1,000 mine accidents in Ukraine since 2022, with farmers making up one of the largest single groups of casualties. John Cunliffe runs the Mines Advisory Group task force in Ukraine. He spoke to me from Kyiv.
We are working in areas that were deoccupied during 2022 and into 2023. A lot of it obviously is agricultural land that was mined during that period, and to varying degrees. There is anti-tank mines in some areas, but there's also anti-personnel mines as well. In addition to that, we have both unexploded ordnance, so shells, artillery shells in general that have not exploded, but also just abandoned ordnance, stuff that's been left behind unused.
And what sort of proportion of the land are we talking about that actually has mines in them? I mean, how are farmers coping with knowing where they are? Are they alerted? Do they know where there might be mines or not?
In general, they have an idea, but unfortunately, on a number of occasions, they find out after an accident when somebody or something touches a mine. That's something usually being a vehicle. But the overall area that is still considered as being contaminated inside of Ukraine is an area probably the size of England and Wales combined.
That's an enormous task, isn't it? How do you approach what you're doing?
If somebody has stepped on a mine or a tractor has gone over a mine in a field, there's a number of things